Awesome. Okay. Should we give folks another 1-2 minutes to jump on?
Sounds good to me.
Seems reasonable. Hi, everyone. Hi.
Yeah, hello.
Thanks for taking time out of your busy days to join us here. I see we got a packed crowd happening here. I'm going to shout out some random people just to make you feel included. Hey, Corey. Hey, Laura. Hey, Michael. Hey, Pam. Princess. Hey, Princess. The room is filling out. I hope everyone is having a glorious Thursday. It's Thursday. No, it's Wednesday.
It's Thursday there, Ross. It's Wednesday.
Oh my goodness. What do the young cool kids say? Tell me you have a toddler without telling me you have a toddler?
Right, there you go.
Ross has 2 toddlers. Just give her
Free for the weekend. Right.
Oh my goodness. Let's go 30 seconds more. Who wants to sing the Jeopardy song?
Not me.
Jenny? Do 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 do.
They're popping in now. I see the count going up. Good. Yeah. Right at 101.
There we go. Let's do a couple more shout outs just before we get going. Hi, Andrea. Hi, Allison. Hi, Catherine. Hi, Helen. Hi, Karen. Holy, lots of folks here. This room is filling out. So let's get going. This will be recorded too, so we can share it with anyone that was unable to join, and with you as well if you care to check in on some of this information for a bit of a deeper dive. Welcome to our webinar. Today we are here with a very special guest who will let her do an introduction in a little bit, but this is the Function Point collaboration with Second Wind webinar to talk about agency staffing, which is such an important topic these days. I will tell you that I've been in this business a long time and I have never heard so many agencies looking for solutions related to resourcing and resource management and solutions about how to manage freelancers or do I hire people. These conversations are more prevalent and more important than ever. So without further ado, Jenny, let's rock and roll.
Awesome. Thanks, Ross.
So for today's agenda, we're going to do a quick introduction, myself, Jenny, and the VIP of the day, Lori Mikes. Yes, then we're going to go into our agency staffing discussion. We have some awesome slides with some awesome data to support the discussion. And go into a Q&A for any of you that might have specific questions for us or Lori. So, Jenny, you're up.
Thanks, Ross. Well, I've been at Function Point for almost 6 years now, and it's been an exciting journey to see everybody go from working in an office and being able to call people to all of a sudden we are spread out across North America and globally. So I'm really excited to dive into today's topic.
Right on. And my name is, as it says, Ross St. George. I started doing this almost 11 years ago. Holy smokes. It feels like an eternity. I have been under the hood, so to speak, of hundreds of agencies. I feel at this point, after so many years, that I've become an expert in agency workflow and agency financials. I'm very passionate about helping agencies be better, whatever that means. Whatever better is your better. Maybe it's make more money. Maybe it's have happier staff. Maybe it's be able to transition away from the business and not be so involved. Whatever your goals are, I like to say those are my goals. Lori.
Yep. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me, Ross and Jenny. I've done a couple of these with Function Point, and they're always wonderful. Just to sit and have a dialogue and talk about these all important topics. I think that smaller to mid-sized agencies face on a daily basis. I probably know some of you out there, although I can't see you. For those of you that I don't know, I'm Laurie Mikas with Second Wind. My official title is Chief Operating Officer, but that does not nearly encompass at all what I do. Working with agencies on a daily basis to provide advice, guidance, consulting, training, whatever you need, as Ross said, which happens to be part of our tagline. tagline, be a better agency. Anything that we can do to kind of guide you, provide you with resources and information, that's what we're all about. And I've been here over 20 years for sure, since 1996. I can't believe it myself, working with smaller to mid-sized agencies that whole time. So like Ross, I've been under the hood hundreds of times and really just enjoy this work and getting to know our clients and Function Point clients. So looking forward to this conversation today.
Lori, when did we first meet?
I'd say it's probably about 10 years ago. I
I'm
think
going to
you
say
were,
in Chicago.
yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
You were relatively new to Function Point and you attended a seminar on operations, I believe, and we first, became acquainted at that point.
If anyone on the call has never been to a Second Wind conference or a Second Wind learning session, learning conference, put that on the top of your bucket list. It is an experience that you won't forget, and you will walk away with very valuable knowledge.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah. Kudos to you for what you do, Lori. Kudos to you.
And
So,
for those that, I was
go
going
ahead.
to chime in. For those that are curious about Lori's upcoming events, I will post them in the chat box so we can all stay connected.
Thanks, Jenny.
Right on. So let's dive into some content, shall we? I think we've kept you all waiting long enough. So today we're going to go over staffing hot topics, particularly related to three big things, and that's staffing retention, how to work with FTEs or staff versus freelancers, and different types of working models. We have data to support this. I'm really excited to show you the data related to staff retention. The data is going to talk about what employers think is the most important thing to retain employees and what employees think is the most important thing to retain them. There's quite the difference. We're also going to, like I said, talk about data to support when to hire someone versus when to use a freelancer, and data that Lori is quite curious about, and I'm curious to chat about too, which is what type of business model, be it remote, hybrid, or in office, is most effective for staffing and most profitable. So Lori, I'm curious to ask you at this point, what has been the most rewarding staffing challenge that you've ever had to overcome personally, or with Second Wind, or with an agency client? What's the most rewarding staffing challenge you've ever had to overcome?
Yeah, and these are conversations we have with agencies every day, and the problems, the successes comes in, all different shapes and sizes. But, as I was thinking about this, because we did a little prep work ahead of the call, wanted to make sure I, understood what we were talking about, gave this some thought. And I thought back to an assignment I did about 18 months ago. An agency called me in to help them with their organizational structure. Of course, COVID threw us all into a loop, and we've been trying to recover from that as best as we can over the subsequent years. And I almost even hate to say that word, but I think we're all certainly aware of, the kind of wrench it threw into the operations of smaller to mid-sized businesses. So they called me in, they had kind of cobbled together their organizational structure over the previous couple of years and really wanted to get it into alignment. They wanted to make sure they had the right people in the right seats. They wanted to make sure that they were staffing up for growth and staffing up for the future. So I came in and kind of did an assessment and interviewed a lot of their people and found that they had done, despite the challenges, a really good job at getting the right people in the right seats, with the exception of kind of traffic and workflow and project management. They were really at a deficit there. So as I had this conversation with the principals, another topic arose about a young woman that they had hired in the account service department, who was an account coordinator for a couple of years, not really excelling at the role, did not enjoy that kind of work, interfacing with clients, and they liked her a lot. She was intelligent, she was bright, she was productive, but just not excelling in that role. And they were thinking about letting her go. And I said, listen, before you make any rash decisions, let's just kind of work through this assignment and see where we end up. So to make a long story short, I interviewed the young lady and found out that what she really excelled at was and enjoyed was moving the work through the agency. You know, she really enjoyed deadlines and critical path and making sure that things were moving and things were getting accomplished. So I sat with the principal and I said, you know, I think this project manager role would be a good role for her. If you're not too far gone at this point and ready to let her go, let's think about how she might excel in this role. So they agreed to give it a try. And, you know, a year and a half later, she is doing wonderfully. And I think what that kind of taught me as employers is, you know, we hire people because of specific qualities they have, and we might hire them for a specific role. They don't always excel in that role, but we don't want to necessarily give up all that we've invested in that person in training and time and bringing them into the fold. We can always potentially find another spot for them at the agency, or at least think about that before you're ready to release someone. Don't give all of that up just because they're not excelling in the role that you hired them for. If they have the qualities that you need and the qualities that you want, maybe you can find another role for them, because finding good people is hard enough these days. Bringing them, onboarding them, getting them integrated into the agency takes time and money. Let's try to utilize the people that we have around us. So I urge you to look at your team if you're trying to fill roles and you might feel like you've got a square peg in a round hole or vice versa. See if you can incorporate them into another role at the agency. And the end result of this is that everybody was happier. She didn't lose her job. The agency found a project manager, and it's all working out for the best. So, you know, a success there in terms of really what they set out to accomplish and what we achieved.
Right on, right on. That's a really good story. Thanks for sharing. It's important to be flexible with your team. I really appreciate you mentioning the sunken cost that's gone into somebody. You've invested in them for so many years and they're part of your culture. How can you continue to work with them maybe in a different capacity than what you think is the best way to work with them? Lori, you work with so many agencies. Second Wind is so successful and so close with your members. I'm curious, with those members, what are the three hottest staffing topics right now?
Yeah, you know, there's probably 10, and I tried to really prioritize these in terms of our conversation today. And I'm going to list them and then we can talk about them each kind of individually. But I think that the number one topic, which we're going to touch on later, is working arrangements for the long term. I think that many agencies are still in a bit of limbo in terms of making a decision as to how they plan to work for the future, for the long term. Many that I speak with still feel that they are in kind of a temporary holding pattern. Should we do this? Should we do that? Now some have made the decision that we're remote and that's it. Some have made the decision that we're back in office and that's it. But there are many that are kind of floating between these decisions. So I think working arrangements for the long term, let's figure out how to make these decisions appropriately. The second thing that a lot of agencies are talking to us about is how to motivate staff beyond money. You know, what are some of the other motivators that will keep employees in our fold? You know, we do recruiting at Second Wind, and I'll be the first to admit, we look at resumes all day long, and we've got people jumping around after 12 months, after 18 months, after 24 months. I mean, their resumes are 4 pages long because they've been in so many roles. So how do we motivate beyond money to build a team again for the long term? And then the last thing that many agencies are struggling with is kind of setting the scales in balance financially. A lot of agencies shot from the hip after COVID, or even, you know, during COVID, whatever the case may be, to bring people on board because some were desperate to hire. And they were hiring account executives at $70,000 and $80,000 when their existing account executives were being paid $40,000 and $50,000. So we've got a great disparity in compensation. And many agencies are feeling that now. It's not only affecting the P&L, but it is affecting how they need to move forward and give raises and promote people. And how do we kind of set those scales in balance?
Good. It's a very fascinating time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's go and dive into our first data-driven conversation of the day, which is about something you just mentioned, retention. So every year, Function Point does a massive, it's our big marketing initiative of the year. We do a massive research project. This data that you're looking at here is gathered from 500 agencies. They were asked why staff stay at their agency. The employees were also asked why they stay at the agency. So to the left is data from agency owners suggesting that they see salary demands as the biggest reason to retain staff. On the right, the employees are suggesting that culture is why they stay with an agency. Notice that the least important factor for an employee to stay with an agency is salary. Most important or what the employer perceives to be as the most important is the least important for the employee. Employee is suggesting culture. So fascinating. I'm wondering, Lori, and I'm curious to hear what your thoughts or experience are on these kind of values related to company culture, work-life balance, and an enjoyable workplace, things beyond salary.
Yeah. I want to address, first of all, the disparity in that data. I think it's important to note that that is really a stark difference between what owners think and what employees think. And the bottom line is much of this disparity comes down to, I think, just lack of communication, lack of really exploring what is meaningful to employees. I think many employers just kind of have in their mind that money is the sticky widget. Money is going to be what brings people here. Money is going to make people stay. And while I think that money is important to all generations, those of all ages, long-term employees, newer employees, we have to support ourselves. Money is going to be important. The fact that it ranks lowest on the employee scale shows me that they're thinking about other things. And the fact that it ranks highest on the owner's scale shows me that they're not querying their employees about these things. They're not necessarily having these conversations. I think if they were, these two things would be much closer together, likely down on the owner's side, and it may stay where it is on the employee side. So I think that's important to note, that we can't kind of just assume what we think our employees want. We have to have those conversations. We have to get into that dialogue. So that's the first thing that I'll say for those of you that are out there listening and who are owners. Make sure you're having these conversations, because we want to give people what they want. We don't want to just assume. And if you're basing it all on salary and you increase that and increase that and increase that, and they leave anyway, you've now invested a whole bunch of money that somebody is just gonna take along with them when they leave. So communication, I think, is important. The other areas, company culture, absolutely. I think I'm not surprised it ranks #1 on the employee side. For agencies, culture has always been our thing. We are creative entities. When we were all working in spaces, we put a lot of money, we put a lot of time and effort into how our spaces looked, how they felt. We got the cool furniture, we got a foosball table, we tried to get together and do things on the, weeknights if we can, on Friday nights, culture, who we are, what we stand for, what we believe in. That was always something that agencies focused on, and I think they still do. It's a little bit different now. I think the hybrid and remote models have made culture more challenging for agencies to hold together and to offer things that are culture building. with their teams. But and I'm sure that many of you have experienced this, and you're trying to do what you can to make sure that culture is a top priority, whether it's shipping someone a cake on their birthday and all having a Zoom call to sing them happy birthday, or just team building activities. That's not all that culture is. And culture is also the agency and who we are and what we want to achieve. But you have to find ways to continually reinforce that, because it is important to employees. And I think that they want to work in an environment that is supportive, that is nurturing, that is a little bit fun, that is rewarding. And all of that really comes from the culture that we build within the agency. Work-life balance. Again, another top priority, I think, for employees. It's also a top priority for agency owners. And even though it's third, it actually has a higher percentage on the employer side than it does on the employee side. But I think work-life balance is also important. It always has been. I just think that pre-COVID, we lived in a different world. We were living in a world where we went to the office 5 days a week. We lived in a world where we worked 9 to 5 or 8 to 6 or whatever it is, and that's what was expected. We did our groceries on the weekend. We did our laundry in the evening. Well, COVID gave everybody a taste of being able to work and live at the same time, and now we don't want to give that up. And I think that's some level of understanding from employers to employees to say, I acknowledge that. I am willing to be flexible. I am willing to give you a couple inches here, but it cannot be at the expense of the agency. We cannot have work-life balance so out of balance that it is only favoring the employees and what they would like to experience and what they would like to achieve in their work life. It also has to benefit the agency. So again, I go back to that communication in saying, employers, we must verbalize, make tangible to our employees what we consider an appropriate work-life balance to allow our agency to grow and to thrive and to be profitable. So it has to be a two-way street. It can't simply be a one-way street.
Something that's quite important here on this data that I was thinking as you were speaking, this data was collected last year, November mainly. And I wonder if, because we've had the economic change and because maybe the tables have turned from an employee market to an employer market, how the data would change. That's obviously just a conversation that we don't know the answer to, but yeah, things are fluid.
They are, and I can say a little bit about that again, just in the change in the tenor of my conversations with agency principals. They're addressing some of these issues more head on now that the shoe is almost on the other foot. I do think that the tide is turning a little bit. So I think some of these things that we're talking about, data from November, is going to be reflective of then. I don't think it's changed dramatically, but I do see that things are moving in a slightly different direction, probably not back to where we were in 2019 or early 2020, but I do think that the conversations are changing, and that as employers, we are feeling more confident and comfortable in many cases to address some of these things we may have been pushing down for a number of months.
Yeah, good conversation, Lori. This is excellent. I hope you're all gaining some valuable insights here. Something I'm really excited to talk about is when to hire versus when to freelance. And somebody is on this call. I'm going to call her out and give her some crazy kudos. Her name is Heather White. Heather White is from an agency in Saskatchewan, Canada. From LMNO, and LMNO has mastered the freelancer game. Let's talk about freelancers. So this data is saying that 64.2% of agencies utilize freelancers to complete work. It doesn't talk about the capacity, whether it be, maybe they have a pool and they use one or two at a time. Maybe they have a large pool, but they're only giving them like an hour or two of work a week. Lori, I'm super curious. How do you balance the higher cost of a freelancer versus an FTE? And what benefits can a freelancer give you that an FTE can't?
Sure, sure, absolutely. And I think that, the bottom line, really, the answer to this question is it is economics. We have to think about our use of freelancers and why we use freelancers. Using independent contractors is nothing new for agencies. It was certainly always something that we utilized. And keep in mind the agency business has evolved over the years. We used to once use freelancers or independent contractors for videography or for video production. Some of that has come in-house at agencies. We've used photographers outside. Some of that has come in-house, but we still tap into those types of providers as well as lots of other types of providers, SEO, SEM freelancers, creative freelancers, copywriting, very unique, specialized copywriting. So there's lots of reasons to use freelancers, and it's really nothing new for the agency business. But deciding when to use a freelancer and when to invest in an FTE or keep that work in-house really comes down to the numbers. I think you have to do an analysis of the types of freelancers you're using, how often you're using them, what you can mark their services up to versus what you are paying them, and is it profitable for you to utilize a freelancer. At some point, you're going to pass that threshold. If you're using a freelancer 50, 60, 70% of the time for a function you could hire in-house, at some point you're going to pass that threshold where you say, listen, we're paying a lot of money here, and yes, we're marking it up, and yes, we're charging the client a specific amount for that so that we can remain profitable. But at some point, it may make sense financially to bring in an FTE. I think for some of the specialized services, you're probably never going to bring them in-house because you're not going to have enough work for them. But I think for certain types of freelancers, you can certainly weigh that equation and say, are we better off having a full-time employee that we're not paying hourly, that we are paying to do a job, that we are paying to do the work? And of course, with an FTE comes everything included, like casual overtime. You can have them do other functions where freelancers are typically geared to one particular project or another, or one particular type of service. So you can utilize your FTEs in other ways as well, outside of how you might particularly use a freelancer.
Good points, Lori. And something that I keep hearing more and more about is the benefits of a freelancer enabling the agency to seek skill and talent beyond their market.
Yes.
If I'm an agency in a small town or a small city, and I'm hiring out of the same pool that everyone else is hiring from, the work is going to start to look the same.
Yeah.
Johnny, my creative, has worked at creative agency X and creative agency Y, and people are just moving around between agencies. But if I go and I hire talent somewhere else, I'm able to offer creative that may start to look different and differentiate the agency's offering.
Yeah.
It's a very fascinating conversation, and you've made some excellent points, Lori. Let's talk about the different models. This is where I'm like, what? This is data that I will explain here. There's 3 models. Hybrid, I'm going to watch my fingers. Oh man, sometimes I count and I'm in front of the camera. Hybrid, fully in office, and fully remote. The blue bar is the billable time. The red bar is the billability. You will notice that the hybrid model has the lowest billability. The fully in office and fully remote companies have higher billability by 8.2%. Lori, what's the deal? What is your take on agencies reporting these numbers, and what makes you suggest to your agency members that they go one way or the other? Just knowing we're on a time crunch too. We got a couple minutes.
Yeah, okay. I wasn't surprised by the data when I saw it in your survey, and I think somebody that I spoke to a couple of months ago described it best. The hybrid is kind of the messy middle. You know, you are in the office a couple of days, you're at home a couple of days, you're losing time, potentially resetting yourself, carrying things back and forth, you know, whatever it may be. That the hybrid environment puts us working in two separate places. Fully in office and fully remote has us stationary for the majority of our time. Fully remote, we might, you know, have to get together somewhere and meet with a client, but the reality is those are kind of fixed models. The hybrid is a little bit more of the messy middle. So I think we lose time there. I think we lose productivity there. And I'm not just talking about the travel. I'm just talking about the kind of resetting of our day and how we work and how we actually function. When we advise members about which way they should go, bottom line is we don't tell them which way they should go. They need to look at their own data and they need to understand what is going to be most appropriate for them. If you are most efficient or productive at a level hybrid that you are satisfied with, then I think you can continue working hybrid. But you need to look at those numbers and understand as best as you can, are we performing in the model at which we are working now, or do we need to potentially think about other models? I think this data is a great way just to kind of guide and say what other agencies are experiencing. If they are experiencing it, you might be experiencing it too. But it is difficult to kind of test and say, well, let's go remote for 6 months and see what happens there. Let's go back in office for 6 months and see what happens there. You have to set your own goals internally and determine, is your model allowing you to meet it? If it's not, then you have to think about potentially modifying that model one way or the other.
I will say to that point, Lori, more and more and more and more, it depends on the type of work that you're doing. If you're a digital web dev focused agency, your employees are probably comfortable working from home and they don't need as much collaboration. If you're working on creative content that requires collaboration, that requires creative directors to be in the trenches with the frontline creatives, that's where we're seeing those agencies going back into the office mode. But again, a dev that bangs out really good code, he doesn't need to collaborate. What's wrong with him working at 2 a.m.?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, right. Yeah. And that allows you to just retain that really valuable developer.
Yes, and I do want to just, I know we're short on time, but just want to say a moment there, you know, during the post-COVID months, you know, agencies had that liberty to hire people all over the country, just like they are able to use freelancers from anywhere. So I think for many to try to undo that is very difficult at this point. So a remote or hybrid might be the only way to go. We may not get everybody fully back in office ever. And I don't want to see agencies give that up. If they've retained incredible talent that happens to be in Omaha and, you know, you're in Trenton, New Jersey, don't give that up. You just have to find then ways to improve your efficiency, to improve your operations. And I don't have to say it, you know, we're on this call with Function Point. That's a tool that can help you do that. And they're not asking me to say this. I am simply saying it's the reality. Use your tools to your utmost advantage, but don't give up all this that you've built just because the numbers may not be in alignment. There are things you can do to improve those numbers as well without changing your model.
Well, Jenny, take it away.
Well, Ross, I was going to say we are a little tight on time, so we'll move on to Q&A. But as we're talking, I just know from my experience with agencies, I'll kick off Q&A with the question is, what is the difference between billable and billability, and why is it important to track both, especially if we're determining which model to go into? So we're going to open up the floors for questions. I am monitoring the questions, so please don't be shy, folks, ask away. And I'll let Lori address this question.
You may have put GoToMeeting into the background now, and I understand that because I'm wanting to do that too. But this is a critical time. If you have questions, come on. What did he used to say on The Price is Right? Come on down.
Come on down. That's right. So billable is the amount of time that you could bill, and billability is what you've actually billed. So we want to see those as close together as we possibly can. I mean, there's a lot of time that we spend that's billable, but we don't always bill it all. And you want to keep that gap, again, as tight as you possibly can. If they can be totally in alignment, that would be great. It's not always possible, but that's really the difference between the two, Jenny.
Mhm. So in GoToWebinar, there's the option to raise your hand, or you can just type a question into the thing. Did I say into the thing? Into the chat box. The chat.
Or in that, yeah.
We did have a question from Lori of when will this be released and where? Typically it takes about 48 hours for us to process this and put it onto YouTube, and we will also send it to our guests if they wish to share.
Questions, anyone? Questions, anyone? Don't make me sing.
I'd love to hear if anybody is in the chat and would be willing to type in how many of you, or tell us what your working arrangement is, since we just talked about this topic: hybrid, fully in office, fully remote. Just be curious where people are right now with that.
Mhm.
I think folks came on here to really, really lean in and listen.
Listen to you, Lori.
Yeah.
Oh man,
I would have talked longer had I known that. I can go on forever, Ross.
the mic's name carries weight, Lori.
Don't know about that, but thank you.
Well, Lori, while we wait for any shy folks to come forward, is there anything that you feel like we could have touched on today that we didn't touch on?
I don't think anything specific.
Yeah.
We had another topic under the survey questions about enjoyable work and projects, in addition to company culture and work-life balance being a draw, I think, for employees. And certainly I think meaning in our work and feeling connected to our work is important. It doesn't mean that all the clients that we work on are going to be enjoyable, or all the projects are going to be enjoyable. And if you're in an industry that is a little bit more esoteric, it may take some onboarding of your employees to get them to love that industry as much as you do. And I think that's fine. We all provide services for all different kinds of clients. But if you're feeling that the team needs a little bit of a boost, look for some pro bono work. That might be for an interesting local organization, or something fun that you can all kind of sink your teeth into. It doesn't have to be billable work. That is always the only thing that's enjoyable, or that we focus on. Some pro bono work as well can really kind of lift the team spirit, not only in subject matter, but the fact that you're giving back to an organization or the community.
And on that topic of working with employees to do some fun things, we have a question here. The question comes from Patricia Santos. How would you deal with an employee who would like to keep working for the agency, but from another country, India?
Well, I think, again, you have to kind of ask yourself, is this arrangement working for us? For them to pick up and move, I think is probably out of the question. If it is a mutually beneficial relationship, you are getting from them what it is you are asking them to do. If this is an FTE, I think that, again, the way we work, the globalness of how we work has certainly expanded in the past few years. So I see nothing wrong with having employees around the globe, as long as it is working for you. The time difference, I think, is somewhat of a issue when you're have an employee in a country like India. That's a big difference in the hours, and in fact, I don't even know how much it is, but I can imagine that communication is complicated. You may have to make some concessions there to keep them in the loop and to keep them engaged. But if it's worth it in terms of the work that they are producing, and they are, earning their keep, so to speak, then I don't see anything wrong with having employees around the globe. Just be careful not to overdo it, or you might be working in, 10 different time zones.
You also have to be conscious of the data that you're working with. A big client of mine is in Pharmaco, and the data could never leave the United States. So that's obviously dependent on your clients. And maybe don't just think about your clients today, but what kind of client would you want in the future? Because in the event that you brought on an insurance or a banking or a healthcare client, that arrangement with somebody working outside of the country might not fly. There was another question here that I thought was super open-ended and fascinating, Lori, which was there any surprises that makes people especially satisfied with agency culture? Are there any, like, to define agency culture, is there any unique definitions of that you think are surprising?
It's an interesting question. I'm not sure
Good
that
question.
I've given much thought to really the definition of culture, but maybe more what it really means to me personally and what it might mean to some of our member agencies. But I think the essence of it really is who we are, and it's all part of our brand as well. Who we are, what we represent as a group. Do we believe that? Can we live that every day? And that kind of infiltrates into our culture. If we're all marching in lockstep, then we feel that we are being supported by others. We are in good company with others who believe what we believe, who live what we live. And I think that plays into culture. Culture, of course, takes on a lot of other forms. As I said, events and team building and doing fun things, those are the results of a strong culture. People want to participate in those things, and you want to offer those things. But I think an understanding of who we are as an agency, what we believe in, what we want to achieve, and everybody on board with that helps to build and foster a strong culture.
Well, Lori, earlier in the conversation, you did have a few tips on culture. I think you when you were chatting with Ross, I'm curious because a lot of agencies struggle to justify the budget of culture. And now that we've had some statistics to show that it is worth it versus allocating that towards employee salaries. So what are some tips around that? I guess what are some surprising things you've heard from what other agencies have done?
Oh boy, it really runs the gamut, and some of it depends on your working model. Again, are we hybrid? Are we remote? Are we all in the office? I think where agencies have been most creative is when they have employees that are not coming into the office. And as I said, something as simple as sending a birthday cake to someone's house when it's their birthday, and singing happy birthday on Zoom can just be a small culture building activity. But I think anything from retreats where we can all get together and we can talk about the future of the agency and engage in team building exercises, to an agency I heard of recently that took their team out on a boat for the weekend. They chartered a fishing boat, and they all lived within driving distance, but they took the team out and they did a fun activity like that. So I don't think it has to be expensive. You don't have to invest a lot of money in activities like this. And again, communication, talk to the group. What do you think would be fun to do? What could we all do together as a group? Do we want to go bowling? Do we have to do something more remote in nature because we're not all in the same neighborhood? I think the sky's the limit, but you can also do things that don't require a big investment. You certainly can if you choose to, but even the small tokens, I think, make a difference.
Yeah, the remote culture is so fascinating to try and wrap my head around. I won't speak for you, but how to build a remote culture. Lots of people with ideas. Whether it's successful or not, I'm not sure that it's yeah. Jenny?
I know we have answers to this question because we have numbers behind this, but this is from Catherine. What is the industry average for billable goals? For example, what percentage should an account exec ideally be responsible for meeting each month?
Yeah.
Take it away.
Yeah. We work from full-time biller, which would be anyone, copywriter, creative, anyone who's touching client work the majority of the time, about 1,600 hours per year for a full-time biller, not an FTE, but a full-time biller. My good friend Vince Dong, who many of you might know, tends to err more on the 1,500 hours per year. So he and I agree to split the difference at about 1,550 when we're doing a presentation together. But I tend to look a little bit more to the 1,600. It's going to vary by position. Every time I do the account service seminar, I query the account service people about how much time they're billing in a year. 6-7 years ago, it used to be 600 or 700 hours. But now when I ask people that question, account executives are putting their hands up at 800, 900, 1,000, 1,100 hours per year. So that number has really crept up. And I think that's because agencies understand the more account service time we can bill, because there's no direct costs against our account service time, really helps us to boost our AGI. And account executives and account coordinators should primarily be working on client work as much as they can. Now, there is some work that they're going to be doing that's not billable, so they're not going to be like a production artist or a copywriter who's mostly touching client work, but they should be up there in terms of hours. And again, each role is going to vary. You know, somebody like your financial manager is going to bill very little, if anything, maybe a small amount to do custom invoices or things like that for clients who request it. But, you know, you're lucky if you get 100 hours a year out of somebody in a role like that. So 1,600 is the marker we use for a full-time biller. And then anyone who is primarily touching client work, that's what they are going to shoot for. And you're going to go down from there. The more admin, the more managerial responsibilities people have, that number is going to, of course, decrease. But again, your data is best. I can give you any milestones that I want to, but you have to use your data as a starting point to understand, are we satisfied? Is our account executive billing enough to cover their overhead and to earn us a profit? If they're not, then you have to set those goals a little bit higher.
Well. We've come to our time together, folks. We're now 1 minute over, and I apologize. I'm a chronic meeting runner over. Sorry.
I am, so it's not your fault, Ross.
Oh, I'm a chatty Kathy. It's all good. Well, thank you everyone for participating. We hope you've at least taken 1 or 2 or 3 nuggets of information away. Lori has, Jenny, do you want to share the, Lori at Second Wind offers wonderful educational knowledge sessions and brings in experts from all over the place, including, as she mentioned, a gentleman that many of you know I have a call with on Friday, Vince Dong. What a guy. If you don't know Vince Dong, you gotta meet Vince Dong.
At least just once.
Yes. Yeah, you gotta meet Vince Dong. You're not gonna regret meeting him. I encourage you all to check out Second Wind. They're an excellent organization. I have nothing but praise to sing about Second Wind. I think you're the envy of most agency associations in North America. You are the apple of my eye, Lori. I hope you all have a good afternoon and morning, wherever the heck you are, evening. What did they say in the Truman Show? Good morning, good evening, good night. Thank you all for your time. We'll send out the recording soon. Merci beaucoup.
Lori's
everyone. Thanks
information. Sorry, Lori, all your contact information, all your upcoming events are linked in the chat. So before you jump out, save that. But we can also send it up in a follow-up email with the video link as well.
That's great. Thank you very much. I appreciate that and appreciate being here today, everybody. Thank you for attending.
Toodaloo.
All right.
Au revoir.
Bye.